was this a relatively close competition? Did Boeing basically edge out EADS? Or was there a wide discriminator? You did not go into the 93, your version of an overtime phase, basically, the 93 mandatory. But how close was this, sir? Was Boeing far superior in meeting the 372 mandatory requirements?
I think what we can tell you is Boeing was a clear winner.
Okay.
How will you respond to people who thought that the EADS was a better bang for your buck in this competition? Is Boeing the better deal cost-wise for the taxpayer?
We went through a process that evaluated warfighting requirements, evaluated price, evaluated life cycle costs, and the process yielded the result it did with Boeing winning. I think Mike, if he wants to expand on that.
We outlined the request for proposal and the acquisition strategy very clearly a year ago, and we followed that process to conclusion.
Mr. Secretary, if I'm correct, I think the EMD contract from 2008, realizing that was under a different RFP, that was actually a lower price. So what are you getting for this $3.5 billion? Do you get airplanes? Do you get test articles? How much flight tests do you get? And why is it a different price than last time?
This is a completely different competition. We indicated that from the beginning. I think if you go back and check the record from a year ago, the EMD phase includes 4 aircraft, I believe. But we have nothing more to say about comparing prices or costs from one competition to another. We indicated from the very beginning that this was a new competition.
But did the work scope change then to now? For either winner or loser?
So, any concerns about a protest that could potentially derail this?
I mean, the unsuccessful offerer has a right to a protest as part of the process. But as we've said from a year ago when we first came before you, we think we've established a clear, a transparent, and an open process. We think we've executed on that, and that will not yield grounds for protest.
Do you believe that over the decade that it's taken to get to this point in finding a new tanker has taught the Department of Defense a lesson that will help in the future in major procurement processes so that it doesn't take a decade and 3 different selection processes to buy something so important to our nation's defense?
I do think we've learned important lessons from this process, and we've tried to reflect them in this competition the way we've structured it. Maybe let Ash expand on that.
Learned a number of lessons. We certainly had the requirements this time absolutely clear from the warfighter. We said that 366 days ago when we released the RFP, and also the contracts are fixed price contracts, which is reflective of our belief that this is a tanker that can be well specified and well defined. So that's appropriate contract structure. So in many ways, this reflects our efforts to deliver better value to the taxpayer and the capability of the warfighter in a budget circumstance, which we all realize is not going to give us more and more money every year. So we're trying to manage to a budget, and this is reflective of the kind of discipline and acquisition that's required.
Allison Burns with Cairo in Seattle. Is it your understanding that this tanker will be built in Everett, Washington? And what is your message today for those Boeing workers? And of course, General Schwartz, we'd love to hear from you.
I think both companies did a terrific job. Boeing was the successful offer, but as Secretary Donnelly indicated, both were strong offerings. And let me let General Schwartz.
I would just say that I'm pleased with how this has produced an outcome after an exhaustive effort by hundreds of the department's very best people, that we will get about delivering a capability that's long overdue, and we'll stop talking about it.
Is the Air Force still going to pursue its KCY and KCZ strategy to replace the remaining tankers?
Yes, there will be follow-up.
When do you plan to sign the contract if you haven't signed it already? And will you allow for work to begin before the protest period runs out, or are you going to wait to find out if there's a protest to begin work?
Let me answer part of that. Yes, the contract is signed, or will be very shortly. and they gave authorization for that this afternoon. And work will be able to begin. Obviously, we're mindful of the process of debriefing the offerers and having them absorb the information and so forth, but we'll get that away.
When is that debriefing scheduled?
It hasn't been, they have to request it, but
Oh, okay.
it's available as soon as they request it.
Okay.
Quick clarification to Mr. Carter. For the second and third phases, if you can be clear, Boeing is not guaranteed those phases, are they?
That's correct. This is for the first 187 aircraft that will be in the future.
170.
I'm sorry, 179, I apologize.
That's 20.
That's not a winner-take-all for all three phases.
No.
No.
EADS was very confident that they had the better plane at the better price. Do you anticipate that they will protest, and if they do, what would that mean for the production timeline?
As I indicated, the unsuccessful offerer has the opportunity to pursue a protest if they think they have the grounds. We think we've put together a process that was fair, open, and transparent, and that does not provide grounds for protest.
Can you say how past performance figured into the evaluation criteria for this competition?
Past performance was part of the mandatory requirements, so it was a requirement to become a qualified offerer. Both of the offerers passed that test and were qualified along with all the other criteria that the Secretary Donnelly mentioned for the qualified fully, both of these offerers to participate in the competition.
I think we'll take one, maybe two more here.
Do you have any more information on how the oversight process was handled within OSD as far as
the source selection, as we indicated, was in the Air Force, and it was an individual in the Air Force who was the source selection authority, as we indicated when we issued the RFP. There were members of my staff from OSD and elsewhere in the department, both experts and overseers that participated in the technical evaluations, and also who ensured that the process was free and fair in the way that, and followed the rules of the RFP issued a year ago.
Have you gotten any indication from EADS whether they will protest? Do you expect one?
We just before coming on, we informed both offerers of the results.
And
that's all that's been done.
Can you give us any more of a sense of how many of those mandatory requirements EADS was unable to meet? And you said it was more than 1%. How many?
Both companies met all the mandatory requirements.
all right, I can't count very well, but we'll do one more. Secretary, you picked the last one, right?
3 years ago, you selected EADS, and back then you said this was best value for the government. Now you're selecting Boeing. Our understanding is their designs have radically changed. How can you account for that turnaround?
I can't account for how the prior competition went. I think we structured a competition that was fair, that was based on a variety of factors, including price, including warfighting capabilities, including life cycle costs, and Boeing was the clear winner of that process.
All right, folks, thank you very much.